So last week, we started a new series called Decoded. That's where I am today. We're looking at the storyline of the Bible, primarily through the book of Hebrews, which would fall somewhere over here. So Pastor Tyler, about the first message last week in this series, and he talked about Jesus being a better messenger, a better God. So better than Muhammad, better than Buddha, better than priests, better than angels in Christianity. He would be better than the prophets of old. He is a better messenger, and that is Jesus. And so today, I want to talk to you about the humanness of God, the idea that God is not just a better messenger, that Jesus is also a better human, is where I want to go with you today. And so a couple of weeks ago, maybe a month or so ago, so Megan and I, we have reached a point in our marriage where we are buying appliances and redoing spaces and all that. We have hit that milestone. The honey-do list is now a honey-gotta-do list at this point. You know, we're thinking about renovations and all of that stuff. And we were out shopping for appliances. I had been in the Lowe's and been in the Home Depot, and it's so different now because they don't really help you anymore. They're just like, hey, scan the QR code, get the specs, look online, come back and buy it. I'm like, I need help. I need help. I have bought a lot of dishwashers. I need help. But they can't help me. So we have reached that point where we went to an appliance store, which means it's going to cost you a little bit more money when you walk into an appliance store. So we went in not looking for what we walked out with, and that's the problem when you go to these places. So we walk in, we find the appliance we're looking for. Sweet lady, she did great. We were in there about half an hour or so finding what we wanted. Then on the way out, we passed down the washing machine aisle, and I just hit one. I said, what if we got a new washer? Why did I say that? So then the nice associate lady looks at me. She was like, washer? I was like, well, I mean, maybe. I don't know, maybe. And she was like, well, you know what the best washing machines are, huh? And I looked at it, and I said, oh, yeah, it's the Speed Queen. And she looked at me, she was like, oh, yes. And then Megan looks perplexed. She's never heard of the Speed Queen in her life. And so there's Samsung, there's LG, there's Whirlpool, and then there's the Speed Queen. The Speed Queen, there's only one Speed Queen in the showroom because they don't need multiple versions. You don't need multiple models because only the Speed Queen costs what the Speed Queen costs, okay? So it better work. So long story short, we got a Speed Queen now. So we've had it for a couple months or so, and the first time I went to use this thing, I was so overwhelmed. I felt like I needed to use the user manual. And it's not because I had never washed clothes before. It's because this was a Speed Queen. And so I went and got the user manual. On my way, I stopped, and I took the selfie so y'all could see me and my Speed Queen. That's how I felt. Where, like, when we were buying the Speed Queen, the lady was like, oh, yeah, you're just going to will this over to your kids. It's that kind of appliance. Like, this is the kind of thing you put into your will. Like, it's supposed to last forever, ever. Never had anything like that. So I'm not even taking the sticker off. This thing costs me so much, it's going to stay there until the sticker come off. Not taking it off. So I got the owner's manual or whatever and started reading it, trying to figure out which setting is for what. Chill. And I get to the section about, like, if your clothes don't come out clean, these are the things. Because I want to know everything that could go wrong before I start using this thing. And I get to the section about, like, if your clothes continue to come out yellow or white or dingy or whatever, it's not the Speed Queen. It's not the Speed Queen's fault. I'm like, what do you mean? That's why I bought it. It's like, no, if it continues to come out with yellow clothes, the Speed Queen cannot get out the extended soil of human skin. I know. That's literally the reason why I bought you. But I kept reading, and then, of course, I opened up ChatGPT, and I was like, ChatGPT, help me understand this human soil or whatever. But it is this idea that there are some parts of our life that cannot be washed away. It is the idea that there is a part of us that is constantly dying that even the most expensive washing machine cannot take care of. We live as humans with this weird chasm that we are human beings, but we're in a constant state of death. We're alive, but somehow we are continuing to shed our lives every day. It's this dichotomy that I am living and I am dying at the same time. But no matter how hard we try, there is nothing that can quite scrub the human condition clean. I can't use more laundry detergent. I can't upgrade from the Aldi blue one to the actual real Tide. Y'all know what I'm saying? Like I can't put in enough fabric softener to get all my rough edges out. And that is a key idea that the author in the book of Hebrews, we don't know quite who wrote it. A lot of theological ideas. I'm not going to go down that rabbit trail. But the whole idea is that in and of ourselves, we can't fix ourselves. That there has to be something better than what we currently see. There has to be something greater than the natural human condition. And that's the problem, because I think it really is hard for many of us to believe in something that you've never seen. You know, for men, it's really hard to be a great dad or a healthy dad if you've never really seen that modeled. It's hard to know like what a fully functioning, good, healthy marriage looks like if you're not a product of that environment. If you've never been under a leader where it was a joy to be obedient, then you don't understand the fruitfulness of obedience, and obedience feels like oppression. And so instead of embracing obedience, we treat obedience like it's optional. And so we read things that are supposed to be absolute truth, but we take it as a good idea because we never fully, because we don't have to. We get to. Because we don't have to, it's a choice. Because we don't have to, it's optional. And it's hard, even on top of believing something you can't see, it's even harder, I think, to trust something that you can't see. How do I trust something that I don't really see, that I can't see that's there? This is why this is why y'all fight so much in long-distance relationships. Because I know you love me, but I can't see what you're doing. You know, I know what you say when we're on the call together, but then I don't quite know if I can trust you when you're going out with your friends after that. I've never felt more misunderstood than when Megan would test my character when we were long-distance dating. We long-distance dated for about 2 years, and I feel like every other fight was about her questioning what I was doing when we weren't on the phone call. Do we love each other or do we not? Now, I was not the best, so I was watching, I was scrolling through Reels the other day, and I came across a reel. There's this influencer that goes out and he interviews people that are really successful. Sometimes I think they're made up, like they're staged, but this one I think was real. So this guy was interviewing Dave Ramsey. He ran up on him and was interviewing Dave Ramsey, like, how did you get successful? Asked him the questions, and he's like, how much net worth do you have? How did you get this much money? And they're going through it, and he's learning all about Dave. And then at the very end, he goes, okay, sir, can I ask you a question? Dave is like, I can't do a good Dave. So Dave is like, yeah. And then he goes, what would you tell, if there was one thing you can tell to the next generation on how to be successful, what would you tell them? And Dave's answer was, he said, I would tell them to trust in God. Okay. Then the whole thing kind of flipped because I wasn't expecting it to go where it went next. You know what the influencer said? He said, well, who is your God? Dave answered back, Jesus Christ, the King of Kings and Lords of Lords. And I was like, yes. And then I just kind of paused and I looked at it again and I really thought about it. That is the question. Who is your God? Is it even possible for a Christian to describe your God without talking about the personhood of Jesus? It is the only religion that when you begin to talk about who your God is, you start by talking about what he has done for you, but you end by talking about what he did for you. You start by talking about the supernatural part of what he has done for you, but then you end by talking about the sacrifice that he made on the cross. He is the only God that is perfectly God and perfectly human. He's not a centaur. He is not some kind of amorphic situation. No, he is supernatural. He's not just a God. He's a better God. He's not just a man. He's a better man. He is fully God, fully man. And for these confused, little bit conflicted believers in the book of Hebrews. So Hebrews is about 60 A.D. Christ died about 30-ish. So we were talking about people about 30 years after Christ. So we're talking about these folks that followed Christ. Some are probably grandparents at this point. Probably got adult kids. Now we got a new generation coming up. So the reason why the message of Hebrews is so important is because it is the message for the next generation. And so it's not a complicated book, but it is a very complex book. Because what the author is trying to do in Hebrews is set up everything that has happened from here all the way till about here. And in chapter 2, the author begins to describe the personhood of God. And so that's my goal for you today, because in order for us first to understand God as man, we must first understand God's original and eternal plan for man. Because when you understand God's plan for man, you begin to understand God's plan for you. And when you understand God's plan for you, your faith becomes personal. Nobody can talk you out of what you believe. When it becomes personal, it becomes fully yours, and you have full ownership of it. So let's start in the beginning. Genesis. We have God. In the beginning was the Word was God, the Word was with God. We have God in the atmosphere. God speaks, light, dark, seasons, earth, and then we get plants, we get land-dwelling animals, we get sea-dwelling animals, we get birds of the sky. All right, and so God sets all of that up, and then in verse 27 is where we come in. So verse 27 of Genesis chapter 1 says this: So God created human beings in his own likeness. He created them to be like himself. He created them as male and female right off the jump. We have a God who's not interested in creating robots. He's not interested in creating robotic figures that just follow the instructions. He is creating a real reflection of himself. You are a real reflection of a living God. Adam, a reflection of God. Moses, a reflection of God. Noah, a reflection of God. Abraham, a reflection of God. But it was not just enough for God to make lookalikes, because he had an even better plan than that. So if we keep reading to verse 28, it goes on to say, God blessed them. And then he said to them, have children so that there will be many of you. Fill the earth and bring it under your control. And so here we have the snapshot of human creation. We have reflection of God. We have a blessing of God on our lives. And then we have the empowerment and authority of God to go and control the earth. God's idea for us as humanity is that we would be a reflection of him, that his hand of blessing would be on our life, and that we would be fully empowered to go and take care of business on the earth. Now, this is Genesis 1. We are in Hebrews about 2,000 or so years later, maybe even more than that, depending on how you want to break down Genesis. But we're way later in the story at this point. So, there's so many concepts that for the mature Christian needs to get in your heart. And this is this, like if you don't have, for the mature Christians, I'm talking about the older generations in the room, if you don't have a fist-closed idea of who God is and use the power of the Spirit in you to articulate that to the next generation, it all goes to waste. It all goes to waste. And so in Hebrews 2, they haven't read Genesis yet. They may know of the Torah, but it is the author's job to make sure the next generation understands who they are. And so when we get to Hebrews chapter 2, verse 6, this is how this whole story is wrapped up for the next generation to understand. So verse 6, it says this in Hebrews. So it says, it has been testified somewhere. What is man that you are mindful of him, or the son of man that you would care for him? You made him, creation story, you made him for a little while, a little lower than the angels, heaven touching earth. You have now crowned man with glory and honor, the blessing of God. You have put everything in subjection under his feet. And now in putting everything in subjection to him, he left nothing outside of his control. So we get a mirrored description of our identity. Reflection, honor and glory, subjection or control under our feet. Now, if this is true, let's go ahead and resolve this untruth that a lot of us like to create this narrative about God. God does not wish to control you. If God has empowered you, put honor on your name, put blessing on your name, God is not interested in controlling you. Okay? God is for us. God is for us. He is not against us. He doesn't want to control us. He has said that our identity will be one of glory and honor and blessing, and that authority and control will be a part of our function. Now, for me, this seems to be where the problem comes in. Because you're going to give us control. That seems to be a recipe for disaster. I would say that is a recipe for disaster. I'd say if we look around, that's probably how we got to this very self-centered, narcissistic, full of me, arrogant, fall of a society. Make it make sense. And I sat with the word, and I studied the word, and I thought about the word, and I asked myself, I said, God, I wonder if you knew that when you created all of this and you empowered us, that we would end up lying for a living. That in our quest to control things and be in charge of things, that instead we would fall and be conquered by sin. That the sin of our selfishness would actually secretly kill us. That instead of being image bearers of you, crowned with glory, crowned with honor, that sin would come in and crack the mirror, and we would no longer know who we are, because when we look, what's reflected back has a lack of clarity to it. When people look at us, they're not quite sure of who you are because our image has been cracked because of sin. That sin would come in and distort our reflection of God, so we no longer know who we are, and because we don't know who we are, we begin to exploit the authority that God has originally given us. Because when you don't see who you are, you begin to feel like you need to prove who you are. And that's what sin does. It causes us to fight for something that we already have. Sin came in and broke God's design. Now, this is not a foreign concept for the author of Hebrews, because after they describe the creation, who we are, and all of that, the guy in Hebrews goes on to say this about us. Everything is under subjection to our feet. But then the rest of verse 8 says, but at present, we actually do not see everything in subjection to him. Which means they were supposed to be in control, but now at the current present, we don't see it the way it was supposed to be. He says, listen, our authority is not at its best. Why? Because we have a sin problem. Because with control came conspiring. When the enemy in the garden got wind that God's desire was to bless us, to give us glory, to give us honor, he said, no, to who? To who? And he began to conspire. And then we get the lure of sin, and every lure of sin begins with a lie. And so then he begins to lie to man, and instead of saying you can be like man, he said, instead of telling man that you were made to be like God, he says you were made to be God. And we fall for the okie doke. And then we get the cycle of sin. When man fell into temptation, we lost both our control and our crown. And it is the story of Adam to Noah to Abraham to Moses to Joshua to David. Like it's one after the other. It is the storyline from Genesis to Exodus, to Leviticus, to Numbers. It is what we see over and over and over again. Man trying harder, losing even worse, and trying to make up for it over and over and over again. And when I tell you that, it seems pretty dang depressing, don't it? Like, well, this seems like a good time. Well, let me pause and just remind you that God has always had a plan for the next generation. So at some point, the cycle had to stop. And so right around here, God says, hold up, wait a minute, let me put some Jesus in it. And we get Jesus. God steps out of heaven in all of his glory, all of his honor, and we get Jesus. Hebrews 2, verse 9. Author goes on to write, and he says, we don't see everything under subjection to him right now, but verse 9 says, but we do see Jesus. And he begins to describe the humanity of Jesus just like they did the humanity of man. He said, who was also made lower than the angels for a little while. He is now crowned with glory and honor. Well, how did Jesus keep the crown? Because he suffered death. And he did it so that by the grace of God, he might taste death for everyone. When man couldn't quite get it right, God said, hold my holy water. Let me come down and get something done down here. When man couldn't quite get it right, God said, I got you. Let me come in. The champ is here, baby. Bum, ba, dun, dun, dun. Da, 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 bah. God is not interested in letting you suffer on your own. But to fix the broken humanity, Jesus had to become a better human. Because a broken system would always require a better Savior. With man, God's originally designed, the problem was that man had a goal to become like God, perverted that goal, so Jesus had to come down and become like us. When God created man, man was supposed to be obedient to God. He was disobedient, suffered death. So Jesus had to come down, become obedient to God, suffer death, and bring us back to life again. When man messed up, sin caused him to hide in shame. But when Jesus came, he shattered the shame of sin because he had no problem suffering in full view, taking on the weight of the world and the weight of my sins. Where the system was broken, Jesus said, hold up, I got you. I am the system. Newsflash, where the system was broken, I will step right on in and I will break the system. He is a better God. He is a better human. He was wounded for my transgressions. He was bruised for my iniquities. The chastisement of my peace was on him, and by his stripes we are healed. He's just not a better human, he's a better Savior. John 1:1, I'm freestyling. John 1:1, in the beginning was the Word, and the Word was God, and the Word was with God. But then we come down to verse 14, and it says, and the Word became flesh and dwelt among us. The Word became flesh and dwelt among us. God knew to restore the crown that he would have to come in flesh to conquer death. In order to restore us back to community again, he would need to come and remove our perverted sense of control that leads us to just competing with each other instead of being in community with each other. And it had to happen. Verse 10 goes on to say, and it was only right. It was only right that he should make Jesus, through his suffering, a perfect leader and the one fit to bring them into salvation. I'm so glad we have a God who's not just interested in standing back watching you struggle with imposter syndrome all your life, trying to figure out who you are, trying to figure out who you were meant to be. No, we would never get it right. That's why we got Jesus. Our God clothed himself in flesh. He came as we are so he could restore everything we were always meant to be. What you did, Buddha? What you did, Muhammad? Huh? God came so we wouldn't be confused and find ourselves having to flick our little quarters and dimes at these little gold statues, hoping that would get us good luck or something. And you know why they do that? Because it's hard to believe in something you can't see. Because it's hard to trust someone you've never seen before. And so God makes himself flesh because someone had to fix humanity. Hebrews goes on, verse 14, it says, because God's children are human beings, made of flesh and blood, the Son also became flesh and blood. For only as a human could he die, and only by dying could he break the power of the devil who had the power of death. It is the storyline of every superhero movie that you love. It is the story of every DC comic. It is the story of every Marvel movie. It is the greatest story ever told of all time. Now, we all know that the greatest superhero movie is the Black Panther. Now, I may be biased. The Queen Mother, she reminds me of my mama. My mama made 73 last Friday, y'all. I know. We FaceTimed for like an hour and a half the other night. The boys went to sleep while we were still on the phone. They started off on the phone. But in Black Panther, every hero movie, you got your hero, you got your villain, right? So in Black Panther, you got King T'Challa of Wakanda. So you got King T'Challa of Wakanda. And then you got Killmonger from the hood. Killmonger represents, like the whole movie is a fight of legacy. So you got good versus evil, which we get in every movie, but in this one you got fighting for legacy. So in the very last final fight scene, you got the king fighting against the past. So you got the king fighting against selfishness, rage, evil, conniving, like all of these characteristics that they made Killmonger, the villain, out to be. And in the very last scene, they're all, doing the fight in the water, and Killmonger throws T'Challa off the waterfall, and you think that's it. Because everybody thought the king's power was in the suit. Everybody thought that the king's power was in the skin. But once they throw him off the waterfall and he comes back, they found out that the real power was in his scars. Because a Savior comes back and fights for those that are broken with scars. He was wounded for my transgressions. And while I love King T'Challa, he ain't never going to beat King Jesus. The only thing that could ever restore the separation that sin put between you and God and man, ironically, was a better sacrifice. There had to be a better death. Something had to die better. Adam died to sin. If we were going to get this right, something had to die better. Why? Well, because with death comes bondage. With bondage comes fear. God has no plan for you to live in bondage and fear. It's not a part of, it's like that wasn't in Genesis 1:27. Nowhere in there was God's plan for you to live under fear, death, and bondage. And so if that's where we end up, somebody had to break the curse. Verse 15 in Hebrews, right into the next generation, it reminds them about the sacrifice of Jesus. It says, and only this way. Are you getting the theme? They're like, therefore, it had to happen only in this way. It's like, hey, let me remind you who this God is. He said, only in this way could he set free all who have lived their lives as slaves to the fear of dying. If God did not make himself human and take on the task of defeating the human experience of suffering that leads to bondage and death, there would be no way for us to enjoy life on earth. There would be no way for us to enjoy the human experience, because we would end up in a doom loop of trying harder. Everything from here, Genesis, all the way till we get Jesus about here is one big doom loop of trying harder. The Old Testament is full of stories of, I'm sorry, God, I'll try harder. But we were so broken, we couldn't even talk to God personally. So I couldn't even really say, I'm sorry, God, I'll try harder. We were so broken and so filthy, if I really wanted to talk to God, I couldn't say, I'm sorry, God, I'll try harder. God had to find somebody who was actually somewhat holy and somewhat upright. And then he would make him known to the community, and then I would have to go to him and say, hey, I'm sorry to God, I'll try harder. Can you go tell God that I'll try harder? What a crazy system. But what a loving God that he created the system so we could talk to him. And it wasn't just enough. I couldn't just go to the priest and say, hey, I'm sorry, I want to try harder. Can you go and tell God? No, I had to bring a sacrifice. Why? Because death requires sacrifice. Because restoration requires sacrifice. And so the doom loop that you see over and over and over again is that man messes up, God creates a system, and now I have to give something that I love so much. I have to give it up as a sacrifice to show God that I really do want to be in this relationship with you. And so what we see throughout the Old Testament is we see stories of people bringing lambs and goats and bulls and doves to the priest to say, hey, I'm sorry, here you go. Can you go and burn that and tell God that I gave you my best? And luckily I wasn't lying. Because if I was lying, he gets to die for my lie. It's a terrible system. But what a loving God that he created it for us. And he became the better sacrifice because here's the thing. I couldn't even just bring the priest any lamb. I had to give him my best lamb. I had to give him my first lamb. Why? Because death requires sacrifice. And the best lamb would have represented financial provision. It's what you work for. It's what you earn for. It's where you make your money. So what are you willing to give up to say that you want to be in a relationship with God? Because there's always sacrifice that comes along with it. And so if I gave a lamb, but not the best lamb, then he dies. And that's why we have Jesus. That's why he is referred to in the Bible as the perfect lamb that was slain. Because there had to be a better sacrifice in order for us to have a holy relationship with God. And the beautiful part is that when God got so sick and done, I really don't even believe God loved the system. And I don't believe God loved the system because we have Jesus. If he loved the system, we would have never got Jesus. It's weird. It's culturally appropriate to a certain degree, but I don't even think God loved it. Because even in that, it's a doom loop of God, I'm trying, and Jesus comes to say his word is final. You are good. We could never say that if it wasn't for Jesus. You are good. I'm not good. Yes, you are. You know why? Because the blood of the Lamb covers you. Because he gave his sacrifice for you. Hebrews goes on to say, verse 2. Chapter 2, verse 17. Therefore, there's a strong word again. It was necessary for him to be made in every respect like us, like brothers and sisters. We are family. So that he could become a merciful and faithful high priest before God. No more middlemen. No more in-betweens. No more leaders I have to go to get to God. No more priests I have to go to get to God. And not only that, he did it so he could offer a sacrifice that would take away the sins of the people. So no more middlemen and no more lambs. No more bulls, no more goats, no more doves. And in the last verse, verse 18, it says this. So since he himself has gone through suffering and testing, he is able to help us when we are being tested. So the testing still exists. The trials still exist. But now you have a better helper. You have a better helper. Like the priest just wanted to help. They just stood and wanted to help the community. The priest had to wear the sins of the community on his shoulders to go and talk to God. He just wanted to help. But the Bible says now you have a better helper. When temptation comes, you can put your trust in Jesus. When temptation comes, you can put your faith in God. When temptation comes, you can put your hope in the healer of your heart and the one who restored the land. Jesus was necessary because he was the only way to get rid of this doom loop of temporary forgiveness. God in the flesh into the human condition, sacrificed it all. Why? So that we can experience eternal redemption through him. Now, what does that look like? Well, when you receive the gift of Jesus, you receive more than most of us understand. You receive freedom from your sin. We get restoration from our broken condition. You receive the fullness of life. You receive community with God as your helper. You receive the release from the crippling fear and anxiety of death, and not just physical death, but death of your dreams. Like sometimes we hold on to our dreams so much because we're afraid of what may happen next. Jesus came so that you don't have to hold on to your dreams so tightly. So you get released from the crippling fear of death and anxiety. And you also get the assurance of knowing that when your flesh does die, when this earthly experience does come to an end, that your spirit will live forever in community with God in heaven, restored back to his leadership, his lordship, his friendship, in the way that he has always desired to have with you. And who is this God? His name is Jesus. He's a better human. He is a better Savior. He's a better sacrifice. And he's a better friend. And your better life with God, it just starts with a better yes. It doesn't start with trying harder. It doesn't try like making, like feeling like you need to live and all this stuff different. No, it just starts with a better yes. Because once you receive the goodness of what God does for you, your attitude begins to change in response. Like you don't change your attitude and behavior to try to get something from God. You receive from God, and then in response to that, your life gets better. You want to change your decisions. You realize you do have help when temptation comes. All it takes is a better yes. And so every head bowed, every eye